The market was full of life that day, but for one alien girl, the world had no space. She lay near the edge of the road, her legs weak and useless, her hands trying to drag her body forward. People passed her like she was invisible. Merchants shouted prices, customers argued, children ran with sweet fruits in their hands, but no one even looked at her. Her skin was pale, her clothes torn, and her hair dirty from the dust of the street. She had not eaten properly for days, and her body shook with hunger, but it was not hunger alone that made her weak. She could not walk. Something had broken inside her long ago. Every movement was painful. Every step was impossible. Aliens who walked past whispered to each other. Some shook their heads with disgust. Others laughed softly as if her suffering was a kind of entertainment. She pulled herself toward a stone wall, hoping to rest her head, but even that was hard. Her arms gave up and she collapsed on the hard ground. And still no one cared, until a shadow fell across her face. A human stood there, tall among the crowd. His clothes were simple, like a traveler or a worker, but his eyes were sharp. Unlike the others, he did not step over her. He stopped. He looked at her with something she had not seen in a long time: concern. The girl tried to push herself up, embarrassed that someone had seen her so weak. Her voice was dry, but she whispered, Don't look at me. Keep walking," but the man did not move. "You're hurt," he said softly, his voice steady. "Why is no one helping you?" Her eyes filled with tears, not from pain but from shame. "Because I am nothing. Because I cannot walk. Because I was left here to rot." The human knelt down beside her. His hands were strong, scarred, the hands of someone who had worked hard in life. He reached out, but she tried to pull away. Fear rose in her chest. "You don't understand," she whispered quickly, her breath shaking. "If you touch me, if you help me, they will come. You will regret it." The human looked at her carefully. The crowd around them had started to notice. Some aliens shook their heads, warning him with gestures to stay away. Others smirked, waiting to see if he would make a mistake. Still, he did not move away. He asked in a calm voice, "What's your name?" The girl blinked in confusion. No one had asked her name for a long time. She swallowed and said, "Liara." The human gave a small nod. "Liara," he repeated as if testing the weight of her name. "My name is Daniel." The moment he said it, the whispers grew louder. A few aliens laughed. "Foolish human," someone muttered. "He doesn't know who she is." Liara's heart sank. She tried again to warn him. "Daniel, leave me here, please. If you don't, they will take you too." But Daniel only shook his head. He slid one arm under her shoulders, another under her knees. Liara gasped as he lifted her from the ground. She was light, far too light for someone her age, and her head fell against his chest. The marketplace went silent for a moment. All eyes turned to the human who carried the broken girl. Some faces were shocked, others filled with anger. A merchant shouted, "Put her down, human! She is cursed." Daniel ignored him. Step by step he walked forward, holding Liara tightly. His face was calm, but his heart was heavy. He could feel her trembling. He could hear her whisper against his chest, "You don't know what you've done." She looked up at him with wide, fearful eyes. "You've doomed yourself." But Daniel only looked back at her with steady eyes. "No," he said, his voice low but certain. "I've saved you." Liara could not believe his words. For years she had been treated as nothing, as a burden, as someone to be left behind. And now this stranger, this human, carried her like she mattered. But deep inside, her fear grew stronger. She knew what would follow. She knew who would come for her. And she knew Daniel was walking into danger he could not imagine. The crowd parted as he carried her away, but their whispers filled the air like poison. "She belongs to the House of Vera," someone hissed. "He will pay for touching her," another sneered. "They will kill him before nightfall," a third said with a cruel smile. Liara closed her eyes, her tears falling silently. She wanted to scream, to beg him to leave her, but her body was too weak. The only sound she could make was a faint whisper, almost a prayer. "Why? Why would you carry me?" Daniel's answer was simple, but his words carried weight. "Because no one else would." The market faded behind them. The shadows of tall towers stretched over the road. Danger followed close, unseen but certain. And yet, in that moment, Liara felt something she had not felt in years. Hope. But hope was dangerous. She knew it would not last, because the House of Vera would never forgive what the human had just done. Daniel's arms tightened around Liara as he stepped away from the crowded market. She was light, too light, as if years of hunger had hollowed her out. Every bone felt fragile under his grip. The silence around them was heavy, broken only by the sound of whispers that followed like shadows. Liara pressed her face into his chest, her breath shaky. "You should have left me," she whispered. "You don't understand what you've done." Daniel didn't answer right away. His boots struck against the stone road with steady rhythm. His heartbeat was calm, though his eyes scanned the crowd carefully. He could feel the weight of stares behind him, angry, mocking, curious. He knew trouble was coming, but he didn't put her down. "Why?" he finally asked softly. "Why does no one help you?" Liara's lips trembled. She turned her head slightly, looking at the road instead of his face. "Because I belong to them," she said bitterly. "Because they own me." Daniel frowned. "Them?" "The House of Vera," she whispered, as if saying the name alone could summon danger. "A great family, powerful, cruel. I was once under their roof. When I could no longer walk, they cast me out. To them, I'm nothing but trash. And anyone who touches me, anyone who dares to carry me, marks himself as their enemy." Daniel slowed his steps, his eyes narrowing. The words carried weight, but his grip on her didn't loosen. Instead, he held her tighter, as if daring the world to challenge him. "Then let them call me enemy," he said calmly. Liara's eyes widened in disbelief. "You don't mean that. You don't know what they will do. They will find you. They will break you," he didn't reply. His silence was more terrifying to her than words. They passed through narrow streets where the crowd thinned. The air smelled of smoke and iron. From the corners, Daniel could see eyes watching, some filled with pity, some with cruel delight. A pair of children pointed at him and whispered before their mother dragged them away quickly, fear in her eyes. Liara's heart sank deeper. She wanted to scream at him to put her down, to save himself while he still could. Yet some part of her couldn't bear the thought of being left behind again. For the first time in years, someone carried her like she mattered. The feeling was strange, dangerous, and painfully warm. "Where are you taking me?" she asked finally. Daniel looked ahead. "Somewhere safe." She gave a bitter laugh, though her voice cracked. "There is no safe place for me. Not on this planet. Not anywhere within their reach." Daniel said nothing. His jaw tightened, but his steps didn't falter. They reached a small bridge that crossed a canal. The murky water below reflected their figures in broken ripples. Liara noticed shadows moving behind them. Men in dark cloaks, silent, following. Her heart raced. She gripped Daniel's shirt weakly. "They're here," she whispered in panic. "The house. They already sent watchers." Daniel didn't turn his head. He kept walking, steady as if he hadn't noticed. But his hand shifted slightly on her body, holding her closer, his other arm free enough to move quickly if needed. Liara buried her face against him, shaking. She wanted to disappear, to melt into the shadows, but she couldn't. She was too weak, too broken. "Why are you doing this?" she asked again, her voice cracking. "Why me?" Daniel's answer came quietly, almost like he was speaking to himself. "Because I've seen enough people look away." The words struck her harder than she expected. She closed her eyes, remembering all the times strangers had stepped over her body as if she was a piece of trash on the ground. This human, he was different. But difference came with danger. The shadows behind them grew closer. One of the cloaked men hissed, "Human! Leave the girl. Walk away and you may live." Daniel finally stopped. He turned his head slightly, his eyes cold, sharp like steel. "She's not yours anymore," he said. Liara's heart nearly stopped. She pulled at his shirt weakly. "No, don't. Please, you'll be killed," the men sneered, stepping forward. "Do you think you can defy the House of Vera?" One spat. "She is property. She crawled from their door, and she will be dragged back to it. Put her down or bleed." Daniel didn't answer. He shifted Liara's weight in his arms and took one step back onto the bridge, his body tense but calm. His silence was louder than any shout. Liara clung to him, trembling, her mind torn between terror and strange trust. She whispered, her voice trembling, "You can still leave me. You can still survive, please. Don't fight them for me." Daniel finally looked down at her. His eyes were calm, steady, unshaken. "Liara," he said firmly, "I will not drop you. Not for them. Not for anyone." Her breath caught. For a moment, her fear broke under something else. Hope. The cloaked men stepped forward, hands moving toward hidden blades. The water under the bridge rippled as the air grew tense. Liara's heart pounded in her chest. She had seen this before. Those who stood against the house never lasted. Yet this human, this stranger, was willing to risk everything. For her. She closed her eyes, whispering, "Then we are both doomed." Daniel's voice came steady, almost like a promise. "No, we're both alive. And that's enough." The shadows lunged closer. The market noises in the distance faded. Only the sound of rushing water and heavy footsteps filled the air. Liara gripped Daniel's shirt with her weak hands, knowing the next moment would decide both their fates. The bridge was left behind, but the memory of the cloaked men followed Daniel like a dark shadow. He had not fought them, not yet, but he knew they would not stop. The House of Vera never forgave. Liara lay weak in his arms, her head pressed against his chest. Every breath from her lips felt like a fragile thread holding her to life. She wanted to speak, to tell him to let her go, but the strength had left her. Her eyes half closed, she watched the streets blur as Daniel carried her further from the noise of the market. They entered a quieter part of the city. The tall towers here were cracked, the walls broken, and the lamps on the streets flickered weakly. Few dared to live in this quarter. It was where the poor, the forgotten, and the hunted hid. Daniel moved with purpose, turning corner after corner until they reached a narrow alley. At the end stood a door of wood, old but solid. Daniel shifted Liara carefully in one arm, pushed the door open with his shoulder and stepped inside. The small shelter smelled of dust and smoke. It was nothing more than one room with a rough table, a chair, and a bed against the far wall. A single lamp gave weak light, pushing away the shadows but not fully. Still, compared to the cold stones of the street, it felt like a palace. Daniel laid Liara gently on the bed. She winced, her weak body stiff with pain. Her legs did not move, and when she saw him notice, she turned her face away in shame. "Don't look," she whispered. "Don't look at what I have become." Daniel sat at the edge of the bed. His voice was calm. "I see a person, not a thing." The words cut deep. She wanted to believe them, but years of cruelty whispered otherwise in her mind. She hugged herself tightly, trying to hide her scars. Daniel stood, poured water from a jug into a small cup, and held it to her lips. She hesitated, then drank. The water was warm, metallic, but it soothed her throat. He then brought a piece of stale bread, breaking it into small pieces and placing them gently in her hand. Tears rolled down her cheeks. "Why?" she whispered again. "Why are you kind to me?" Daniel looked at her, his face calm but his eyes sharp. "Because no one else is." Liara lowered her head, chewing slowly. Each bite felt heavy, as if her body had forgotten how to accept kindness. When she finished, Daniel sat back. "Tell me," he said. "Tell me why the house cast you out." Liara's hands trembled. She wanted to stay silent, but his steady gaze gave her no escape. At last she whispered, "I refused him." Daniel frowned. "Refused who?" "The Lord of Vera," she said, her voice cracking. "He wanted me to kneel, to obey, to be his. I was young, weak, but I said no. So he punished me. He broke me. He left me unable to walk and threw me away like broken glass." Her words trembled in the room, heavier than the shadows. Daniel's fists tightened. For a long moment he did not speak. Then he said slowly, "So that is why they fear you. Not because you are cursed, but because you stood against him." Liara shook her head quickly. "No, they call me cursed because he said I was cursed. And in this city his word is truth, even if it's a lie." Silence filled the shelter. Outside, the wind carried distant sounds of footsteps, faint but growing closer. Daniel heard them. His eyes shifted to the door, then back to Liara. "They will come," she whispered in fear. "They will take me back. And they will kill you." Daniel leaned closer. His voice was steady, but it carried steel. "They will have to step through me first." Liara's tears flowed faster. She grabbed his sleeve weakly. "Why do this? You don't even know me. You don't owe me anything." Daniel looked at her hand on his arm. Then he met her eyes. "I don't need to know you. I only need to know you were left to die, and that was wrong." Before she could answer, a loud knock shook the door. The shadows had arrived. Liara's heart froze. She gripped his sleeve tighter. "It's them," she whispered, her voice broken with terror. "They've come." Daniel stood slowly, pulling free from her grip but not from her gaze. He walked to the table where a simple metal tool lay, a hammer worn but strong. He picked it up, his hand steady. Another knock, harder this time, echoed in the room. A voice outside hissed, "Human." "Open the door." Hand her over. She is property of the House of Vera. Liara shook her head, panic rising. Don't fight them. You can't win. Please, Daniel, please. But Daniel didn't move to the door. He stood firm, the hammer in his hand, his body between her and the world outside. The voice grew sharper. Open, or we break it down. Liara buried her face in her hands, whispering, It's over. It's over. But Daniel's eyes were calm, his jaw set like stone. He looked back at her once, his voice steady. It's not over, he said. Not while I'm here. The pounding on the door grew louder, and the shelter filled with shadows. Liara's heart raced, torn between terror and something she hadn't dared to feel for years. Faith. For the first time since her fall, she wondered if maybe, just maybe, she wasn't as alone as she thought. The pounding on the wooden door grew louder, each strike shaking the small shelter. Dust fell from the ceiling and Liara flinched with every thud. Her hands clutched the blanket around her legs. Her wide eyes locked on the door that stood between her and the nightmare outside. Human, the voice growled again. Open the door. Do not test the House of Vera. Hand over what is theirs and you may yet live. Daniel stood tall in the dim light, the hammer heavy in his grip. He didn't move toward the door, but his body was tense, ready. His shadow stretched long across the floor, covering Liara like a shield. Liara's heart raced. She whispered, her voice trembling, Daniel, please. You can't fight them. They'll kill you before you take a single step. Daniel turned his head slightly, his eyes calm and sharp. If I hand you over, they will kill you. That I cannot allow. Her lips parted, but no words came. She had begged before, begged others to help her, and always they turned away. But this man, this human, was ready to stand against the most feared house in the city. For her, another strike came, this time cracking the old wood. A sliver of light appeared as the door began to splinter. Voices murmured outside, more than one, maybe 5 or 6. They brought soldiers, Liara whispered, tears filling her eyes. It's not just watchers. It's guards. Daniel's jaw tightened. He stepped back, positioning himself between Liara and the door. Then they'll have to bleed for her. The hammer gleamed in his hand, simple but deadly. His eyes didn't blink, didn't waver. The door broke open with a crash. Splinters flew across the floor as armored aliens forced their way in. Their armor was black, trimmed with the silver crest of the House of Vera. Each carried a short blade, curved and sharp. The leader stepped forward, his eyes like burning coals. Human, he spat the word like poison. You've made a mistake that will cost you your life. That girl is property. She belongs to us. Liara shook her head desperately from the bed. No, I don't belong to you. You cast me out. You left me to die. The leader sneered. You refused your place. Refusal has a price, and now you've been touched by this outsider. Both of you will pay. Daniel's voice broke through the heavy silence. It was calm, but it cut like steel. She is not yours. Not anymore. The guards laughed cruelly. One hissed. Bold words for a human in a city not his own. The leader pointed his blade at Daniel. Step aside, or I will cut you down and drag her through the dirt. Daniel's grip tightened on the hammer. He didn't move. His silence was his answer. The guards advanced. Liara's heart slammed in her chest. She tried to rise, tried to crawl, but her legs failed her. Daniel, please, don't do this for me. You'll die. Daniel glanced back at her, his face unreadable, but his voice steady. Better to die standing than live watching them take you. The first guard lunged. Daniel moved fast, faster than the alien expected. The hammer swung with brutal force, striking the guard's helmet and sending him crashing to the floor. The crack echoed in the small shelter. The others snarled, surrounding him. Blades flashed in the dim light, sparks flying as steel met steel. Daniel fought like a man who had nothing to lose. Every strike measured, every move precise. His body turned, dodged, blocked, struck. The hammer smashed into armor, breaking bones beneath. Liara watched in shock, her tears mixing with awe. She had expected him to fall in the first strike, but he didn't. He moved with the strength of someone who had carried heavy burdens all his life, who knew pain but refused to bow to it. But there were too many. A blade slashed across Daniel's arm. He hissed in pain but did not stop. Blood dripped down his sleeve, red against the dark room. He swung again, dropping another guard, but the leader stepped forward, blade gleaming. You fight well, the leader growled. But you are only human. And humans break. Daniel's chest rose and fell, sweat mixing with blood on his skin. His grip on the hammer never loosened. His eyes burned with defiance. The leader raised his blade high, ready to strike. Liara screamed, her voice breaking the air. Stop. For a brief moment, everything froze. Her voice, though weak, carried something strange, an echo, a weight. The guards turned their heads uneasy. Even Daniel paused, sensing something hidden in her cry. Liara's eyes glowed faintly, a shimmer deep inside them like light trapped in crystal. She clutched the blanket with trembling hands, her voice shaking. I am not your property. I am Liara, blood of Vera. You will not take me again. The leader's face darkened. Blood of Vera or not, you are broken. And broken things are ours to own. Daniel stepped between them once more, his body bleeding but unbroken. Then you'll have to own me first. The air was thick with silence, the kind that came before blood spilled again. Liara's chest heaved. She could feel something inside her, something locked for years stirring awake. The whispers outside the door grew louder. Neighbors, bystanders, all watching from the shadows. They whispered of blood, of rebellion, of a human who dared to defy the house. And for the first time in her life, Liara realized her suffering had become more than her own. It had become a spark carried in the arms of a human. The air in the small shelter was thick with smoke and fear. Broken wood and blood stained the floor. 2 guards lay groaning. Others stumbled back with bruised bones, but the leader still stood, his blade dripping. Daniel's chest rose and fell heavily, blood seeping from the cut on his arm. His hammer felt heavier with every breath, but his eyes never wavered. Liara lay on the bed, trembling, her eyes glowing faintly as if some hidden fire inside her had awoken. The leader spat on the floor, glaring. This ends now. You can't protect her forever. The House of Vera rules this city. Even if you kill us, more will come. Whole squads. You'll be hunted until you choke in the dirt. Daniel's jaw tightened. He didn't argue. He already knew it was true. Liara's weak voice broke through the silence. Daniel, we must leave. If we stay, they will return with more. Daniel gave one short nod. He didn't want to run, but he knew protecting her here was impossible. He swung the hammer one last time, forcing the guards back, then grabbed Liara in his arms. She gasped as he lifted her again, her body pressed tightly against his chest. His blood smeared her torn clothes, but his hold was steady. The leader shouted after them, his voice echoing in rage. Run, human! Run while you can. The house will hunt you both until the stars themselves burn out. Daniel didn't look back. He kicked the broken door open and stepped into the night. The city was alive with shadows. Torches burned on the streets and the sound of armored boots echoed in the distance. The alarm had spread. The house knew. Daniel ran through the narrow alleys, his breath deep and controlled, every step measured. Liara clung to him weakly, her heart racing. They'll catch us, she whispered. They always catch those who run. Daniel glanced down at her, his voice low but firm. Not tonight. They darted through broken markets, past shuttered homes, past silent faces peering through cracks in doors. Every eye that saw them widened in shock. A human carrying the cursed girl. Whispers followed like fire spreading in dry grass. They're running. The house won't forgive this. Maybe the human will succeed. For the first time, some whispers carried not fear, but hope. But hope burned fast and danger came faster. At the end of the street, soldiers appeared, armored and armed, blocking the way. Torches lit their silver crests, their blades gleaming. One shouted, "Stop! Drop the girl!" Daniel didn't stop. His eyes scanned the street quickly. To the right, another alley. Narrow, dark. He darted into it, his boots pounding the stones. Behind them, shouts rose and the sound of pursuit grew closer. Liara's tears streamed down her face. Her body trembled with every step. Why? Why risk your life for me? Daniel's grip on her tightened. Because you were left behind. And I don't leave people behind. The alley twisted like a snake, then opened into a wider road. Ahead, fires burned. Merchant stalls set ablaze to light the night hunt. The glow painted the city red, shadows dancing like monsters. Daniel's chest burned, but he kept running. Liara pressed her face into his chest, whispering prayers she had not spoken since childhood. Shouts came from both sides now. Soldiers closed in, their blades clashing against shields, their boots striking in rhythm. Trapped, Liara gasped. We're trapped. Daniel stopped in the middle of the burning road. His eyes scanned quickly. Walls on both sides, too high to climb with her in his arms. Soldiers ahead and behind. For a moment, silence fell. Only the crackle of fire and the pounding of his heart remained. Liara lifted her head weakly. Daniel, His eyes met hers, calm despite the fire and the blades. Then we make them regret trapping us. The soldiers charged, shouting battle cries. Daniel set Liara down gently against a wall. Stay low. Don't move. Her hands grabbed his sleeve weakly. You'll die. He pulled free, his jaw set. Maybe, but I'll take enough of them with me to buy you time. Liara shook her head, her tears falling faster. Nope, don't leave me. Daniel looked down at her one last time, his voice softer. I'm not leaving. I'm fighting. He turned, raising the hammer, his body straight despite the blood on his arm. The firelight painted him in red and gold like a warrior from old tales. The first soldier reached him, blade raised high. Daniel's hammer struck with brutal force, shattering armor. The man crumpled to the ground. Another came, slashing across his side. Daniel winced but swung back, breaking the soldier's jaw. The street became chaos. Sparks flew. Blood spilled. Daniel fought with fury, every strike of his hammer a promise that he would not bow. Liara watched, her heart breaking. She wanted to scream, to beg him to stop, but something stirred inside her again. The faint glow in her eyes grew stronger, brighter. Her voice trembled, but when she whispered, the air seemed to listen. Please. Protect him, please. The fire roared higher, almost answering her call. The soldiers hesitated, uneasy, as if something unseen pressed against them. Daniel swung again, his strength nearly gone, but his will unbroken. The leader of the squad stepped forward, raising his blade. Enough, end this! But before he could strike, a sudden blast of light burst from Liara's eyes. A wave of energy rippling across the street. The flames bent away. The soldiers staggered, covering their faces. Daniel froze, his hammer mid-swing as the glow washed over him. He looked back at Liara, her body weak but her eyes burning with hidden power. The soldiers shouted in fear. She's awakening. The cursed blood awakens. Liara collapsed against the wall, her glow fading, her chest heaving. She whispered faintly, Run, Daniel. While they fear me. Run. Daniel's grip tightened on the hammer. His body was battered. His arm bleeding, but he bent down, lifted her once more, and carried her through the gap the soldiers had left in fear. The fire burned behind them, but they pressed forward into the dark streets, into the unknown. The hunt was far from over, but for that night, they had escaped, and the whispers in the city spread faster than fire, about a human who defied the house, and a broken girl who was not so broken after all. The flames of the burning market still glowed behind them, but Daniel didn't stop. His boots struck the stone roads again and again, each step pushing him and Liara further into the sleeping outskirts of the city. His chest burned, his arm bled, yet he carried her as if she weighed nothing. Liara's head rested weakly against his shoulder. Her breath was shallow, her body trembling from the strange light that had burst from her minutes earlier. She didn't understand what had happened. She only knew that something deep inside her had awakened, and that the soldiers now feared her more than ever. At last, Daniel reached the broken ruins of an old district. The buildings here were half collapsed, their walls covered in vines and dust. Few dared to enter this place. It was said to be cursed, haunted by memories of a forgotten war. But for Daniel, it was shelter. He slipped into a crumbling structure, its roof partly gone, its walls leaning but still standing. Inside, the shadows hid them from the world. He lowered Liara gently onto a pile of old cloth. She winced as her body touched the ground, but she did not complain. Daniel tore a strip of fabric from his own sleeve, tying it around his bleeding arm. His movements were quick, practical, but his breathing was heavy. He sat down beside her at last, leaning against the wall, his eyes sharp and watchful. Liara looked at him through tired eyes. You should have left me, she whispered. Now you bleed because of me. Daniel shook his head slowly. I bleed because the House of Vera has power, not because of you. She stared at him for a moment, then lowered her gaze. You don't understand. They won't stop. You are only human, and Her voice cracked. I am broken. Not worth saving. Daniel turned to her, his face calm but steady. I carried you because you are worth saving. Broken or not, you matter. Her lips trembled. No one had ever said those words to her. She wanted to believe them, but the weight of years pressed against her heart. She turned her face away, hiding her tears. The night outside was quiet, but Daniel knew silence was dangerous. He could almost feel the soldiers searching, their boots striking the streets, their torches cutting through the darkness. It was only a matter of time before they found the ruins. Still, for a moment, there was peace. Liara broke it with a trembling whisper. Daniel, why? Why risk your life for me? You could have walked past like all the others. He looked at her, his eyes distant as if remembering something far away. Because once I saw someone left behind, and I did nothing. I swore I would never do that again. Liara blinked, confused. Who? Daniel's voice was quiet, heavy. A comrade, on a battlefield far from here. He was wounded, crying for help. I was ordered to keep moving, so I did. When I looked back, he was gone, dead. I told myself I had no choice. But the truth is, I chose to obey instead of saving him. That day, I broke something inside myself. He paused, his jaw tight. Then he looked at her again, his voice steady. Tonight, I will not make the same mistake. I will not leave you crawling in the dirt. Liara's chest tightened. His words pierced her heart like nothing else. She felt tears slide down her cheeks silently. Daniel shifted closer, his voice low but strong. I swear this, Liara. As long as I breathe, you will not crawl. You will not be left alone. Not while I carry you. Her hands shook as she clutched the cloth beneath her. No oath had ever been made to her. Not by family, not by anyone. She whispered, broken and small. Why would you swear such a thing? You don't even know me. Daniel's eyes did not waver. I know enough. I know you suffered and no one cared. That is enough for me. For the first time in years, Liara felt warmth where only cold had lived. She wanted to speak, to tell him how much those words meant, but her throat closed with emotion. Instead, she leaned closer, resting her head lightly against his shoulder. The ruins held their silence. The wind blew softly through broken walls, carrying the faint sound of soldiers in the distance. Torches moved like fireflies across the city, hunting, always hunting. Liara whispered again, so faint it was almost lost to the night. If they find us, they will kill you. And I couldn't bear that, please. Don't die for me. Daniel's voice was calm like stone. I don't plan on dying. Not tonight, but Liara knew the truth. The House of Vera would not stop. They would send more. And Daniel, human or not, could not fight armies forever. Still, she closed her eyes. For the first time, she allowed herself to rest in someone's arms, to believe in the safety of his oath. Outside, the soldiers' voices grew closer. The hunt had not ended. The ruins were not safe for long. Daniel tightened his grip on the hammer lying across his knees, his eyes fixed on the broken doorway. He had sworn, and he would keep his word, and somewhere deep inside Liara the strange glow stirred again, faint but steady, like a spark waiting for fire. The night was not done with them. Danger crept closer with every step of armored boots. But Daniel's oath hung in the air like a shield. She would not crawl again. Not while he lived. The ruins were silent, but Daniel knew silence could lie. He could hear the faint clatter of boots against stone, distant but closing. The House of Vera was not finished. They had tasted defiance, and now they wanted blood. Liara stirred beside him, her eyes half open, her face pale. She could feel the tension in his body as he sat alert, hammer across his knees, watching the doorway. They're coming, she whispered, her voice thin. Daniel gave a single nod. Yes, she shivered. You can't fight them all. No one can. He looked at her, his eyes steady, his jaw set like iron. Then I'll fight until I can't stand. Because I swore I'd carry you, and I meant it. Liara's throat tightened. The weight of his oath pressed into her heart. For so long she had been treated like a burden, a curse, an object left to rot, and now a human carried her as though she was worth his life. Outside, torches flickered in the night. Shadows grew larger, spreading across the broken walls. The voices of soldiers rose, calling orders. Search every ruin. Find the girl. Kill the human. Liara's hands trembled as she gripped Daniel's sleeve. You should leave me. If they take me, maybe they will spare you. Daniel shook his head. No, I don't run from my oath. Before she could speak again, the door burst open. Soldiers poured in, armored and armed, their blades catching the firelight. The leader from before stepped forward, his face twisted with rage. You run well, human, he sneered, but the chase ends tonight. Hand her over and we'll make your death quick. Daniel rose slowly, lifting his hammer. His body was bruised, bleeding, but his eyes burned with defiance. She is not yours. Not tonight. Not ever again. The soldiers laughed, but there was unease in their eyes. They had seen his strength already, and they had seen the strange light in Liara. Still, they advanced. Liara's heart pounded. Fear squeezed her chest, but something else moved inside her. something that had awoken in fire and blood. The faint glow stirred again, brighter this time. She gasped as warmth spread through her body, through the legs that had long been dead to her. Daniel stood firm as the soldiers closed in. The first swung his blade. Daniel met it with the hammer, sparks flying. The second rushed in, striking from the side. Daniel turned, blocking with his arm, pain shooting through him, but he didn't fall. He swung back, his hammer breaking through armor. The room shook with battle. Steel clashed, men grunted, blood fell to the floor. Daniel fought like a man carrying more than a hammer, like he carried his oath itself. But numbers pressed him down. Blades cut his side, his shoulder, his leg. His body weakened, yet he still stood. Liara cried out, tears burning her eyes. "Stop, you'll kill him." The leader laughed cruelly. "Yes, and then we'll drag you back to your master." Liara's fear turned to fury. Her body shook as the glow in her eyes burst forth, brighter than before, spilling light into the ruins. Her scream filled the room, not weak but powerful. A wave of energy exploded from her, slamming into the soldiers. They staggered, their blades clattering to the floor, their torches snuffed out as if crushed by invisible hands. The walls trembled, dust raining down. Daniel froze, his hammer mid-swing. His eyes widened as he looked back at her. Liara's body glowed faintly, her broken legs trembling, her hands burning with light. She wasn't weak anymore. She wasn't nothing. The soldiers scrambled in terror. "She's awakened." One shouted, "The cursed blood is real." The leader roared, forcing himself forward against the wave. "No, she is ours. She belongs to the house." Liara's voice cut through the chaos, strong and clear. "I belong to no one." Her body shook as she tried to stand. Pain seared through her, but the light held her up. For the first time in years, she rose from the ground, her legs trembling but moving. Daniel's heart pounded as he watched her. He stepped to her side, steadying her with one arm even as his body bled. Together they faced the soldiers. The leader snarled and raised his blade, but Daniel moved first, his hammer striking with the strength of his last breath. The weapon crushed the blade, sending the leader crashing to the floor. The others, terrified by Liara's glow and Daniel's defiance, stumbled back. Whispers filled the room. "She walks." She awakened. The house cannot control her. Fear turned their courage into dust. One by one they fled into the night, leaving their leader broken and the ruins echoing with silence. Liara collapsed against Daniel, her glow fading but her body still upright. Tears streamed down her face. "Daniel, I walked. For a moment I walked." Daniel caught her, holding her close. His voice was rough but steady. "You did more than walk. You stood." She buried her face in his chest, sobbing. For the first time, her tears were not of shame but of freedom. Outside, the city whispered. Word spread like fire. A human had defied the house. The cursed girl had risen. Inside the ruins, Daniel held Liara as dawn broke over the horizon. The light of the sun touched her face, mixing with the last glow in her eyes. Her fate had changed. Not because of power, not because of blood, but because one human had carried her when no one else would. The path forward was unknown, filled with danger, but it was theirs now, together. And for the first time, Liara believed in tomorrow,